Above the Luo River, wisps of blood mist drifted, and the entire city fell silent, as though it were shrouded by an invisible fear. Everyone's gaze was fixed, somewhat dazed, on the blood mist. Even though they were witnessing it with their own eyes, they still found it hard to believe that a lower Earth Supreme had truly been slain before them. A lower Earth Supreme, a true powerhouse in the great thousand worlds. Even among the superpowers and ancient clans with deep-rooted history, the lower Earth Supreme was unquestionably one of the most elite forces. If it were anywhere else, a lower Earth Supreme could stand as king, dominate the region, and become the true ruler of the land. Everyone knew the might of a lower Earth Supreme, for it was an ascension to the very essence of life itself. Once one reached this level, the Supreme Sea within the body of a lower Earth Supreme would shatter. But this destruction was akin to an evolutionary breaking, because the Supreme Sea would fully merge with the blood and flesh. Even if the body of a lower Earth Supreme were destroyed, as long as there was any life force remaining, they could heal their body, almost as if they were immortal. To truly obliterate a lower Earth Supreme, one would need to eradicate every last trace of life force within their blood and flesh, and achieving such a feat was obviously no easy task. Unless the two combatants were at vastly different levels of power, where one could completely overwhelm and suppress the other. As for a lower Earth Supreme attempting to eliminate another lower Earth Supreme, that was an exceedingly difficult task. However, that very difficult task had, today, unmistakably appeared before everyone's eyes. Gulch. Countless powerful figures couldn't help but swallow nervously. Even those other lower Earth Supremes who had been secretly watching the Luotian clan felt an overwhelming sense of dread rising in their hearts. Distant Tower, Lu Tiandao, the Lord of the Netherworld. Palace, and others exchanged looks, and from each other's eyes, they saw a deep sense of fear. None of them had expected that Mu Chun truly possessed the terrifying power to eliminate a lower Earth Supreme. When Lu Tiandao thought back to his previous encounter with Mu Chun, a cold sweat broke out on his back. Fortunately, Mu Chun had no intention of killing back then, or else his fate might have been no better than that of the lower Earth Supreme from the Blood God clan. From the beginning, they had all underestimated the Lord of Mu Manor, because, without them realizing it, this young man, once seen as insignificant as an ant, had already truly surpassed them all. Lu Tiandao and the others exchanged a brief glance, and then quietly sighed in their hearts. They were starting to view Mu Chen's position with more respect. At the very least, they had developed a sense of awe for the young manor lord. Mandala, standing nearby, remained silent, coldly watching the change in their attitudes to Mu Chen's thunderous actions had not only shaken the Blood God clan, but also awakened these unruly figures. By now, perhaps they would understand that Mu Chen, even without her support, was fully capable of solidifying his position as the Lord of Mu Manor. Moreover, she, who knew him best, understood that even in this situation, Mu Chun had yet to reveal his strongest trump card. One chi transforms 3 purities. Otherwise, not to mention a mere blood robe, even if those 3 lower Earth Supremes from the Blood God clan attacked together, they would likely gain no advantage against Mu Chun, who was wielding 1 chi transforms 3 purities. But Mu Chun clearly didn't want to reveal this trump card easily, which was why he allowed the blood robe to struggle a little longer. "You little bastard, I will tear you to pieces." And just when the world seemed still, after a long pause, a roar filled with extreme rage rang out, carrying an insane killing intent that reverberated across the heavens and earth. The blood spirit son's eyes turned blood red, his hair stood on end, and a terrifying spiritual force surrounded him like a tangible substance, faintly transforming into a raging sea of blood. He clearly hadn't expected that Mu Chun would be so decisive and ruthless, without hesitation, delivering a fatal blow to the blood robe, eradicating all life force and slaying him. That a lower Earth Supreme was, without a doubt, a huge loss for the Blood God clan. Just the thought of such a loss sent the Blood Spirit Son into a frenzy. Boom! In his fury, the Blood Spirit Son could no longer contain his murderous intent. With a single finger, a torrent of blood-red energy shot out, within which countless grotesque blood faces floated. Bang! However, Just as the blood-red torrent shot out, a vast spiritual power strike swept down, directly cutting it off midway. The one who made the move was, of course, Luo Tiangong. Luo Tiangong first glanced at Mu Chen with a complex expression, then turned to Blood Spirit Sun and sneered. Do you really think I'm just a decoration? Luo Tiangong, as long as you hand this boy over to my Blood God clan, I guarantee that in the future, your Luo God clan will be untouched. Blood Spirit Sun gritted his teeth and said, his hatred for Mu Chen clearly reaching its peak at this point. However, in response to this exchange, what he received was a mocking smile from Luo Tiangong, who didn't waste any more words. With a flick of his sleeve, the enormous Supreme Dharma form behind him unleashed terrifying spiritual power, locking Blood Spirit Sun in place, preventing him from attacking Mu Chen. Good. Good, Luo Tiangong. You will regret this. Seeing Luo Tiangong's response, Blood Spirit Sun's face twisted with rage, and he threatened loudly, his eyes filled with a deep, chilling malice as he cast a long, cold glance at Mu Chen, seemingly trying to exert pressure on him. However, Mu Chen seemed to have not heard his chilling glare at all. Calmly, he clapped his hands. Then his cold gaze shifted toward Blood Pupil, who was trapped in the spirit array. At this moment, the 9 dragons slaying immortal array was on the verge of collapse under Blood Pupil's frenzied attacks. The originally 7 spiritual energy dragons had been reduced to just 3, barely holding on. Clearly, a spirit array, even one of Grandmaster level, was insufficient to deal with a lower Earth Supreme. But this situation was about to end. Mu Chen smiled lightly at Blood Pupil in the 9 dragons slaying immortal array. Then, with a movement, countless gazes from all directions saw his figure directly appear within the array, sitting cross-legged midair. Seeing Mu Chen descend from the sky into the spirit array, Blood Pupil's face changed drastically. He knew very well the huge difference between having a spirit array master controlling the array and not having one. Not bad, to have damaged the array this much. Mu Chen looked at the nearly shattered 9 dragons slaying immortal array and smiled faintly. A cold light flickered in his slightly lowered eyes. Then, he waved his sleeve, and countless spirit seals surged forth, merging into the array. Buzz. As Mu Chen acted, the 9 dragons slaying immortal array, which had been on the brink of collapse, immediately erupted with vast spiritual energy. The broken parts began to visibly repair at an astonishing speed. Within just a few dozen breaths, a complete 9 dragons slaying immortal array reappeared. Looking at this scene, Blood Pupil's teeth ground together. He had worked so hard to damage the array to this extent, but now Mu Chen had restored it in the blink of an eye. The 9 dragons slaying immortal array was only in defensive mode before. Now, let's see how you handle it. Mu Chen stared at Blood Pupil with a smile, and his hands suddenly formed a seal. Roar. As Mu Chen's hand seals were completed, the roar of a dragon resounded through the spirit array. Then, as spiritual energy surged, one after another, spiritual energy dragons reformed in the array. In a moment, the 7 dragons had returned to the array. Moreover, when these 7 dragons appeared, the entire array released a terrifying oppressive force. This pressure was several times stronger than before. It was the same array, the same number of dragons, but once Mu Chen took control, the true power of the 9 dragons slaying immortal array could be fully realized. Feeling the overwhelming pressure from the array, even Blood Pupil's face turned grim, and a trace of fear flashed deep in his eyes. Because from the current 9 dragons slaying immortal array, he sensed an extremely dangerous aura. If before, the array could only hold him back, now, if he wasn't cautious enough, he could end up like Blood Robe, truly perishing here. My time is limited. I still have to deal with another one. If you manage to keep your life, then that will be your ability. Mu Chen's eyes were ice cold as he stared at Blood Pupil. Without hesitation, his hand seals shifted abruptly, and immediately, the 7 dragons in the array erupted with deafening roars. In the next instant, the 7 dragons lunged violently toward Blood Pupil. As the 7 giant dragons swooped down, they erupted in blinding columns of light, only to merge into a single massive dragon nearly 100,000 feet long. With overwhelming dragon might, It barreled toward Blood Pupil with immense force. Faced with such a terrifying display of power, Blood Pupil's expression changed drastically. In no longer daring to hesitate, he immediately activated his supreme Dharma form. Vast spiritual energy surged forth, and his secret techniques, as if he had no care for cost, were unleashed recklessly. Boom! Boom! In the next instant, the giant dragon collided, causing an explosive surge of violent spiritual energy. Visible shockwaves swept across the battlefield, tearing apart the very fabric of the heavens and earth. Under such a terrifying impact, the 9 dragons slaying immortal array couldn't withstand the pressure and shattered instantly. However, as the 9 dragons slaying immortal array broke apart, the massive supreme Dharma form also exploded simultaneously. A battered figure shot out, blood spraying in all directions. Across the Luo River, it left a streak stretching tens of thousands of feet before finally coming to a stop. Chen glanced briefly at the shattered 9 dragons slaying immortal array, showing some regret. He noticed that while Blood Pupil had suffered severe injuries, he had not been completely destroyed. Second round. Blood Pupil severely injured. Chen paid no attention to the gasps of shock coming from Luo God City. He didn't chase after Blood Pupil, instead quickly changing direction and darting into the ranks of the soul-slaughtering guards. He had to eliminate the 3rd Blood God Clan Earth Supreme, while the soul-slaughtering guards battle was still strong. When Chen entered the soul-slaughtering guards, an overwhelming battle exploded, howling like a storm, sending chills down the spine of anyone who witnessed it. 1 incense stick later, with a surge of battle will, Chen waved his sleeve, collecting all the soul-slaughtering guards who were wounded from the battle. Then, with a cold gaze, he looked down. Below him, the river's surface had collapsed into an unrepairable pit, where Blood Hand lay, drenched in blood, with waning spiritual energy. Third round. Blood Hand severely injured. At this moment, the world fell into a deep silence. In the surging Luo River, a massive depression appeared, nearly cutting off the river's flow. At the center of the whirlpool, Blood Hand lay amidst torn clothes, his body soaked in blood and his spiritual energy depleted, showing clear signs of a heavy injury. Farther away, Blood Pupil sat on the Luo River, his face pale, looking disheveled. Above, the blood mist from the shattered blood robe seemed to have just dissipated. Across the heavens and earth, countless gazes were fixated on the two, their expressions full of shock and awe, as if the entire scene had been swallowed by an eerie silence. This moment, whether from the Blood God Clan, the Luo God Clan, or even those who had merely been spectators, all felt a shiver run down their spine and a sense of fear rise from within. Such achievements were terrifying beyond measure. With his own strength, he fought against 3 Earth Supremes, and in the end, managed to kill one and severely injure the other 2. At this moment, they would rather believe that Chen was an Upper Earth Supreme hiding his true power. But the reality was harsh. If Chen were truly an Upper Earth Supreme, even if Bloodrobe and the other 2 were given more courage, they would not dare to join forces to attack him. Thus, the truth was clear. This young man, who had achieved such terrifying results, was indeed just a Lower Earth Supreme, on the same level as Bloodrobe and the others. With this realization, all gazes across the world began to turn toward the sky. There, a slender young figure stood suspended in the air. His handsome face was calm, and even though he had just achieved such a remarkable feat, there was no sign of excitement. It was as though everything was just as it should be. Had this been earlier, most would have thought he was merely putting on a facade of strength. But with his extraordinary accomplishments now evident, everyone realized that his calm demeanor was an even deeper, more unfathomable display. In the stunned city, the powerful members of the Luo God Clan looked up at the young figure in the sky, their eyes trembling. Deep in their gaze, there was an undeniable glimmer of hope and exhilaration. Clearly, the situation had evolved beyond their expectations. They had initially believed that Chen would be trapped in a desperate situation under the siege of the 3 Earth Supremes from the Blood God Clan. However, the final outcome saw the 3 Earth Supremes utterly defeated. This unexpected turn rekindled a glimmer of hope in their previously despairing hearts. Perhaps this young man, who shared an extraordinary bond with the Empress, truly had the power to turn the tide and save the Luo God clan. Luo Xiao and Luo Qinyo exchanged glances at this point. They had long abandoned any thoughts of rivalry. More than anything, they now hoped that Mu Chen could genuinely aid Luo Li and lead the Luo God clan out of this dire predicament. Earlier, they had harbored doubts, but now, they were beginning to believe. Perhaps Mu Chen truly could accomplish the impossible. From atop a distant tower, Lu Tiandao and the Lord of the Netherworld Palace watched as Blood Pupil and Blood Hand were once again gravely wounded by Mu Chen. Their throats instinctively tightened. Then, when their gazes shifted to Mu Chen, the reverence in their eyes had already reached the level they usually reserved for Mandala T. This moment. They were wholly and utterly convinced Mu Chen's overwhelming combat prowess was simply staggering. And more importantly, he was still so young. Brimming with limitless potential, Lu Tiandao and the others were now certain that given time, Mu Chen would undoubtedly surpass Mandala. When that day arrived, Mu Manor would grow unimaginably powerful because of him. And as for them, by aligning themselves with Mu Chen, they would gain status and resources they had never dared to dream of before. The Lord of the Manor is truly a peerless genius, destined for greatness that I suspect that in the future, we will look back on our choice today with gratitude. Lu Tiandao sighed, his voice filled with deep reverence. This time, when he addressed Mu Chen as Lord of the Manor, it was spoken from the heart, filled with unwavering sincerity. The Lord of the Netherworld Palace and the others couldn't help but sneer inwardly at how quickly this old fox had abandoned past grudges and begun openly flattering Mu Chen. However, despite their thoughts, they wasted no time in nodding fervently, voicing their agreement with Lu Tiandao's words. Seeing their change in attitude, Mandala's lips curled into a slight smile. She knew that from this moment on, these people had finally recognized their place. In other words, they had truly set aside their former pride and grievances, accepting Mu Chen as their superior and becoming his most loyal subordinates. This little brat. Amidst the sea of stunned gazes, Luo Heavenly God stood motionless, staring at the devastated Luo River before shifting his complex gaze to Mu Chen. This battle result had left even him utterly shaken. With strength equal to a lower Earth Supreme, Mu Chen had slain one Earth Supreme and severely injured two others. Such a feat was beyond words. And for Luo Heavenly God, the emotions were even more complicated. After all, just a few years ago, he had personally witnessed this very boy, back then still somewhat naive and frail, standing before him, utterly powerless. Even so, Luo Heavenly God had sensed, beneath that frailty, an unyielding determination. Back then, he had vaguely felt that this boy would eventually grow strong. His instincts had not been wrong. What caught him off guard was just how quickly that day had arrived. It had only been 4 years. That once weak youth, who had yet to even step into the sovereign realm, had risen like a comet, reaching the ranks of Earth Supremes. And more than that, he possessed the terrifying strength to stand above all lower Earth Supremes. Facing Mu Chen now, even Luo Heavenly God felt an involuntary chill in his heart. A small part of him was relieved that when he had taken Luo Li away years ago, he had not used his position to belittle or suppress the boy. Otherwise, today, he would be in an incredibly awkward position. Never provoke a young man on the rise. Luo Heavenly God sighed deeply. Due to Mu Chen's overwhelming battle record, the 3 Earth Supremes from the royal branch of the Luo God clan, who had been besieging Luo Tianlong, suddenly hesitated. They looked at the grievously wounded Blood Pupil and Blood Hand, then at one another, reading the fear in each other's eyes. What an incredible kid. Luo Tianlong's eyes shone with admiration as he burst into hearty laughter. No wonder that girl Luo Li holds him so dearly in her heart. Her judgment is every bit as sharp as her talent. With that, his gaze turned icy as he looked at the 3 Earth Supremes from the royal branch, sneering. It seems the Blood God clan's support isn't as unshakable as you thought. The 3 Earth Supremes' expressions darkened, but they forced themselves to maintain composure in a grave tone. One of them said, "That boy may be strong, but he's already at his limit." Luo Tianlong gave a sarcastic smile, but chose not to engage with them further. Instead, he kept casting appreciative and satisfied glances at Chen, admiring his earlier ruthless methods. It was truly to his liking. Everyone in the heavens and earth marveled in awe, and after a long pause, their gazes finally shifted to the direction of Blood Spirit Sun. At this moment, the latter's face was as dark as water, his eyes radiating a killing intent so intense it seemed almost tangible, staring at Chen with unwavering focus. His body trembled slightly, which showed just how enraged he was deep inside. Trash. 3 pieces of trash. You let a little brat beat you into this state. After all your years of cultivation, have you turned into nothing more than dogs? Blood Spirit Sun ground his teeth, his voice a furious roar that he could no longer hold back, but his anger was mostly directed at Blood Pupil and Blood Hand, and his scathing words left them utterly humiliated. However, both Blood Pupil and Blood Hand remained deathly silent, understanding that even as 3, they had failed to kill Chen. Instead, one of them had been killed, and the other 2 were heavily injured. When word of this got out, they would surely become the subject of ridicule. All of you attack together. Kill that little brat. Blood Spirit Sun's voice was icy, and his dark eyes not only glared at the wounded Blood Pupil and Blood Hand, but also at the other 2 lower earth supremes of the Blood God clan. Blood Pupil and Blood Hand's faces were pale, but they still managed to force themselves to stand up slowly. And you 3 can't even deal with one person? If you don't want to live, I can help you with that. Blood Spirit Sun's cold gaze shifted, suddenly locking onto the 3 lower earth supremes from the Luo God clan's royal branch. Go join them. If that kid doesn't die today, you'll take his place. Upon hearing this, the faces of the 3 lower earth supremes changed dramatically. Their expressions grew extremely ugly, but as they looked at the blood-red eyes of Blood Spirit Sun and the overwhelming killing intent he radiated, they dared not resist. They could only grit their teeth and send 2 of their number to stand by Blood Pupil and Blood Hand. The remaining 2 lower earth supremes of the Blood God clan flashed into the fray, and in an instant, 6 lower earth supremes were standing directly opposite Chen. Although half of them were heavily wounded, the sight of such a lineup was still incredibly terrifying. Whoosh! Faced with such shameless tactics from the Blood God clan, a wave of astonishment erupted in Luo God City. Even some onlookers from other forces could not help but curse under their breath. The Blood God clan truly had no shame left. The powerful experts from the Luo God clan gritted their teeth in anger, but they were helpless against Blood Spirit Sun. Victory belongs to the king, and defeat to the bandit. If we care too much about what others think, the Blood God clan would never have risen to power, Blood Spirit Sun sneered. However, despite the glances around him, Blood Spirit Sun remained unfazed, sneering back at Chen. His voice was filled with menace as he said, "Little brat, aren't you supposed to have plenty of hidden cards? Try them now. If you can beat them all down again, I'll have the Blood God clan swear allegiance to the Luo God clan." Chen smiled lightly and responded, "You scheming little fox, it's better to just be done with you. Don't waste your time dreaming of me becoming your subject. You still talk tough when you're about to die." Blood Spirit Sun's eyes turned cold. Chen shrugged, casually glancing at the 6 lower earth supremes glaring at him. He smiled and asked, "Are you sure it's me who's going to die?" "Oh," Blood Spirit Sun sneered, his lips curling into a mocking smile. "Are you really going to deal with 6 lower earth supremes?" Chen smiled widely at the imposing lineup of 6 lower earth supremes, and then said, "It seems you've forgotten what I said earlier." Blood Spirit Sun's brow furrowed. His voice turned cold as he asked, "What nonsense? Are you trying to be mysterious now?" Chen lowered his eyes slightly and said indifferently, "I told you, I'm Chen, the Lord of Mu Manor." Blood Spirit Sun scoffed, sneering, "What nonsense is this Mu Manor? Never heard of it." Chen raised his head, a slight curve lifting the corners of his handsome face. As he did so, Blood Spirit Sun suddenly felt a sense of unease rising in his heart. "Since I'm the Lord of Mu Manor, do you really think I'm the only one there? Call for help, you think I can't do that?" As Chen's voice fell, his hand lifted, and with a swift motion, he waved it lightly as the palm of his hand descended, Countless powerful figures in the world witnessed the space behind Mu Chun suddenly warp. Following this, a series of figures, carrying vast waves of spiritual energy, stepped out of the void and directly appeared behind Mu Chun amidst the astonished gazes of many BTTH this moment. Even Blood Spirit Sun's expression drastically changed. He could hardly believe his eyes, taking a sharp breath in, as a shiver ran from the soles of his feet straight to the top of his head, causing his scalp to tingle. High in the sky, Mu Chun stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Behind him, a terrifying surge of spiritual power erupted, warping the space further. Then, figures began to emerge from the distorted space, eventually standing silently behind Mu Chun amidst the stunned gazes of those present. There were 5 figures in total. 5 figures, each exuding an extremely terrifying spiritual aura. Waves of shocking spiritual pressure erupted from their bodies, and the clouds at an altitude of 10,000 meters were torn apart. These 5 figures were none other than 5 lower Earth Supremes. When they appeared, the spiritual pressure previously emanating from the 6 lower Earth Supremes on the blood pupil side was completely suppressed. Instead, they began to feel a terrifying sense of oppression spreading toward them from the other side. Their expressions instantly turned grim, and an undeniable shock slowly crept into their eyes. 5 lower Earth Supremes. They are all from that so-called Mu Manor. The strength of Mu Manor is actually this formidable. In the vast expanse, someone finally snapped out of their shock. They gazed at the scene in disbelief. 5 lower Earth Supremes, such strength, in the entire Western Heaven realm, could probably only be matched by the Blood God clan. Yet now, this previously unknown Mu Manor was also capable of such power. Moreover, it was clear that the 5 lower Earth Supremes were all positioned behind Mu Chun, and there was a certain reverence in their expressions toward him. This meant that they truly acknowledged Mu Chun as their leader. At this moment, they fully understood why Mu Chun was so fearless of the Blood God clan. His strength and the power of Mu Manor indeed gave him the qualification to confront the Blood God clan. After all, facing such a lineup, even Blood Spirit Sun would probably have to retreat. If he were to stubbornly fight using his Upper Earth Supreme strength, the result would likely be a mutually destructive outcome. This guy, Luo Tianshun, was equally stunned by the scene. After a long pause, he could only bitterly smile and shake his head. Mu Chen's previous performance had already won him over, but he never expected that Mu Chen still had such a powerful hidden card that in the years since. Mu Chen seemed to have transformed from a naive youth into a super powerhouse. Moreover, he had gathered a group of formidable beings under his command. From Luo Tianshun's estimation, Mu Chen's current strength and resources were probably not inferior to their Luo God clan. Comparing the two, Luo Tianshun's gaze toward Mu Chun began to carry a touch of admiration. This young man was indeed a miracle. Perhaps, if Luo Li were to be with him, it might even bring a miracle to their Luo God clan. Greetings, Manor Lord. Amidst the countless astonished gazes, Lu Tiandao and the other 5 did not pay attention to the crowd. Instead, they respectfully cupped their fists and gave Mu Chun a subordinate salute. Mu Chun raised an eyebrow at their actions. In the past, although these guys had addressed him as Manor Lord, it always felt a bit awkward. However, this time, Mu Chun could sense genuine respect in their tone. He looked at the 5 of them thoughtfully and soon understood. It seemed that his previous accomplishments not only shocked the Blood God clan, but also intimidated these guys. This pleasant surprise made Mu Chun smile. After all, getting these 5 once arrogant figures, who had once dominated the Northern Realm, to genuinely submit was no easy feat. After your battle earlier, these guys, I believe, can be handed over to us, said the Lord of the Netherworld Palace with a smile. He was a decisive person, and having acknowledged Mu Chen's position, he immediately adjusted his stance and began to fulfill the duties of a loyal subordinate. Lu Tiandao and the others nodded one after another, their malicious gazes locking onto Xue Tong and the others, eager to take action. Seeing the looks from Lu Tiandao and the others, Xue Tong's 6 companions felt a shiver run down their spines. Though there were 6 of them, nearly half had been severely injured by Mu Chun, so if a real skirmish broke out, they would undoubtedly suffer a great loss. The 3 Earth Supremes from the royal branch of the Luo Shin clan secretly groaned. their faces full of bitterness. They had never expected that this seemingly young kid not only possessed terrifyingly strong personal power, but was also the so-called Lord of Mu Manor. What was even more shocking was that within this unknown Mu Manor, there were actually 5 Lower Earth Supremes. Such a powerful lineup was comparable to the Blood God clan. With this person's appearance, the Luotian clan, which had once been on the verge of collapse, managed to reverse the situation. Under his protection, Luo Li smoothly received the Luotian inheritance, and it was easy to imagine that Luo Li's position in the Luotian clan would be unshakable from now on. Their defeat seemed to be gradually inevitable. Their anxious gazes turned towards Xue Lingzi, who was also wearing a grim expression. The appearance of Lu Tiandao and the others had also greatly shaken him. But as an Upper Earth Supreme, he quickly suppressed his emotions deep within. He stared coldly at Mu Chun and said slowly, "I, Xue Lingzi, have seen countless people, but I didn't expect to be so blind this time." His tone no longer carried the previous disdain, and he began to view Mu Chun as an equal. After all, with Mu Chun's status as the Lord of Mu Manor, he was now a person that even Xue Lingzi had to truly fear. Mu Chun merely smiled faintly, without saying a word in response. Xue Lingzi was silent for a moment, then said, "I can overlook the matter of you killing my Blood God clan elder. In fact, my Blood God clan is willing to compensate you with 300 million supreme spiritual liquid, as long as you don't interfere with what happens here. And as for Luo Li, you may take her with you." These words caused an uproar among the crowd. No one had expected that Xue Lingzi would be so decisive. Not only was he not pursuing Mu Chun for the killing, but he was also willing to offer compensation and release Luo Li. However, by doing so, the Luotian clan would undoubtedly be doomed. Countless eyes turned towards Mu Chun. After all, 300 million supreme spiritual liquid was no small amount, and it was likely that even the Blood God clan had emptied their treasury to come up with such a sum. The people of the Luotian clan trembled as they looked at Mu Chun. The amount of supreme spiritual liquid was almost unimaginable to them. Even an Upper Earth Supreme could truly be tempted by this. Moreover, they all knew that if Mu Chun refused, he might indeed end up in a life-or-death battle with an Upper Earth Supreme. The pros and cons between the two sides were clearly evident. What a great temptation. Mu Chun chuckled, somewhat surprised by Xue Lingzi's boldness, that he smiled lightly and then turned to Luo Tianshan, saying with a half-smile, "Clan leader Luo, what do you think?" However, Luo Tianshan remained calm, showing no sign of concern. Of course, this wasn't because he trusted Mu Chun, but because he trusted his granddaughter, and now he also believed in her judgment. With her discernment, there was no way she would look favorably on a person who could be swayed by 300 million supreme spiritual liquid. Seeing Luo Tianshan's expression, Mu Chun couldn't help but pout slightly. He then turned to Xue Lingzi, smiling faintly and saying, "What other tricks do you have? Feel free to use them." His words were clearly the final answer. Upon hearing this, Xue Lingzi's expression remained mostly unchanged, as if he had anticipated it. However, his gaze grew even colder as he stared at Mu Chun. After a moment, he said in a low voice, "Since you won't take the path I offer, don't blame me." With that, he suddenly turned around and cupped his fists towards the distant sky, respectfully calling out, "Elder Winter, please show yourself." As Xue Lingzi's voice fell, the sky in the distance suddenly grew frigid. Snow began to fall from the heavens, and the entire world seemed to have turned into the depths of winter. Snowflakes swirled through the air and suddenly gathered in front of Xue Lingzi, forming into the figure of an old man dressed in a white robe. His hair and beard were completely white, his face gaunt and withered. His expression was emotionless, but faint snowflake-like patterns could be seen flickering across his face. Countless gazes turned toward the old man in the white robe. Some experienced powerhouses suddenly changed their expressions, and fearful voices reverberated through the world. That's Elder Winterchill. Heavens, why is he here?" Countless strong individuals were filled with shock, and the powerful members of the Luo God clan turned ashen in an instant. Even Luo Heavenly God broke into a cold sweat, his eyes filled with fear as he stared at the elderly figure emanating the chilling aura of winter. This old man was renowned across the Western Heaven continent for he was a super powerhouse with the level of a perfect Earth Supreme. Of course, what was even more terrifying was that he came from the Western Heaven Battle Hall. You actually brought someone from the Western Heaven Battle Hall here. Luo Heavenly God glared fiercely at Blood Spirit Sun, his eyes bloodshot. Clearly, he never expected that Blood Spirit Sun would calculate to this extent, leaving no way out for the Luo God clan. Blood Spirit Sun grinned coldly. Bringing Elder Winter here had cost their Blood God clan an enormous price, and this time, no matter how much Chen struggled, he would have no place to be buried. Earlier, I gave you a chance to live, but now, it's too late to escape. Blood Spirit Sun turned to Chen with a chilling smile, his killing intent once again surging in his eyes. Because once Elder Winter appeared, the price their Blood God clan paid would rise once again. Initially, Blood Spirit Sun had no intention of calling upon this elderly figure. Blood Spirit Sun's gaze shifted back to Elder Winter, and he respectfully said, "Elder Winter, please, take action and deal with this arrogant brat." Elder Winter stared coldly at Chen, and the snowflakes around him seemed to fall faster, the snow whistling through the air, even tearing apart the surrounding space. However, just as everyone thought Chen was surely going to die, Elder Winter shook his head and said indifferently, "I can't kill him." Blood Spirit Sun froze, wondering if he had misheard. He quickly forced a laugh and said, "Elder Winter, you're joking. With your perfect Earth Supreme vision, how could it be anything but a piece of cake to kill him?" The countless strong figures exchanged confused looks. Clearly, no one knew what was going on. Even Luo Heavenly God and the others looked at Chen with uncertainty in their eyes. What he said isn't wrong. As long as I'm here, he truly can't kill Chen. Just as everyone was left puzzled, a slightly childish, clear, and crisp laugh suddenly rang out from the heavens and earth. Then, the countless strong figures saw, beside Chen, the space rippling, and a petite figure appeared within their line of sight. When this small figure appeared, the cold, winter-like world quickly began to warm up once again. Luo Heavenly God, Blood Spirit Sun, and the others' pupils shrank in horror as they turned to look at the petite figure. Their terrified voice could no longer be suppressed and blurted out, "Perfect Earth Supreme! Perfect Earth Supreme!" The terrified voices of Luo Heavenly God and Blood Spirit Sun echoed across the heavens and earth, causing countless gasps to fill the air. Then, countless astonished gazes turned towards Chen's side. There, the space was still in turmoil, with a small figure standing beside Chen. As the gazes of everyone gathered upon her, almost all of them were stunned. "That little girl is actually a perfect Earth Supreme," someone couldn't help but exclaim. "Fool, at that level of power, how could she possibly be a little girl?" But there were still rational individuals who were not deceived by the appearance of the mandala. Who exactly is Chen? He's powerful enough to call upon a perfect Earth Supreme. Others couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. A perfect Earth Supreme was in existence at the very pinnacle of power, even within the Western Heaven continent. To summon such a being required not only immense connections, but also an immeasurable cost. Even the Blood God clan, a power of their caliber, had to pay a heavy price to bring Elder Winter here. Yet, no one had expected that beside Chen, there was also a perfect Earth Supreme level powerhouse guarding him. This fact was something Blood Spirit Sun and Luo Heavenly God had never anticipated. Especially the strong one, whose face twisted as he looked at the petite girl in a black dress standing beside Chen. A dizzying sensation flooded his mind. He never imagined that the strongest trump card he had prepared to destroy the Luo God clan would still be countered. Who is this Chen? The phrase constantly swirled in the mind of the Blood Spirit Sun. Being able to summon a powerhouse like the Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form wasn't something any random faction could achieve. It was only at this moment that he understood the words Elder Winter had spoken earlier. Facing Chen, who was also protected by an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form, he truly realized that he couldn't kill him. Elder Winter. Blood Spirit Sun trembled as he looked at Elder Winter Chill. Their Blood God clan had paid an enormous price to summon the latter. If this failed, they would truly suffer a loss too great to bear. However, Elder Winterchill merely glanced at him indifferently, then slowly turned toward Mandala. His voice was hoarse as he said, "You must be from outside the Western Heaven continent, right? Your interference in the internal disputes of my Western Heaven continent doesn't quite align with the rules set by the Western Heaven Battle Hall." The old man's voice emphasized Western Heaven Battle Hall, clearly making his point known to Mandala. He understood that Mandala must know his meaning. The rulers of the Western Heaven continent were the Western Heaven Battle Hall. Under such a vast and powerful force, even if Mandala were an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form, she wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Because the ruler of the Western Heaven Battle Hall was the Western Battle Emperor, a heavenly supreme whose name echoed across the great thousand worlds. Mandala, however, didn't seem to care for his warning. She casually pursed her lips and said, "Chen is the son-in-law of the Luo God clan, so naturally, he has the right to fight for the Luo God clan. Moreover, he is also the Lord of Mu Manor. Are we, the people of Mu Manor, just supposed to watch as you deal with our Lord?" At these words, a wave of astonishment spread throughout the crowd. Even Elder Winterchill looked at Chen in disbelief. From what Mandala said, she was actually one of Mu Manor's people, and she even revered Chen as her lord. This was simply too hard to accept for many in their view. Only a heavenly supreme could have an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form as a subordinate and control them. Yet now, Mandala was saying that she took Chen, a mere Lower Earth Supreme, as her master. This was simply absurd and unbelievable to all, but no one thought Mandala was simply speaking nonsense. After all, a powerhouse of the Upper Earth Supreme's level wouldn't casually speak without reason. To do so would damage their own reputation. Blood Spirit Sun too was in disbelief. Even their Blood God clan, with all its resources, could never recruit an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form. Yet this Chen, how did he manage to do it? This bastard, how can he have such luck? At this moment, the Blood Spirit Sun was consumed by intense jealousy. If their Blood God clan had an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form, they probably would have already unified the Little Western Heaven realm. As for the shocked and fearful gazes from all around, Chen could only helplessly shrug. In fact, he wanted to say that the position of Lord was forcibly given to him by Mandala, as she had no interest in it. But since Mandala insisted on giving him face, he could only put on a smile and try to appear inscrutable. Elder Winterchill took a deep look at Chen. If what was being said was true, then there must be some extraordinary force supporting this young man. As an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form himself, he was well aware of the pride possessed by such powerhouses. In his view, if Chen didn't have some powerful backing, Mandala would never have willingly taken orders from him. Today, we have already decided to support the Luo God clan. If you want to assist the Blood God clan, then I'll deal with it, Mandala said lazily, completely ignoring their thoughts. Elder Winterchill smiled and slowly replied, "The payment the Blood God clan offers me is insufficient for me to deal with an Upper Earth Supreme in perfect form." Upon hearing this, the Blood Spirit Sun's face turned ashen. Luo Tian God and the others let out a sigh of relief. Though Chen had an Upper Earth Supreme backing him, they still didn't want a confrontation. After all, Elder Winterchill was an elder of the Western Heaven Battle Hall. In the Western Heaven continent, no one dared to disrespect an elder of the Western Heaven Battle Hall. Chen, however, gave Elder Winterchill a suspicious glance, still doubting that he would simply let this matter go. However, I came to the Luo God clan at the invitation of the Blood Spirit Sun clan leader. I only took on this task because it was on my way. A peculiar smile appeared on the weathered face of Elder Winterchill at this moment. Upon hearing this, Blood Spirit Sun's face couldn't help but twitch. Their Blood God clan had gone to great lengths to invite Elder Winterchill, only for him to casually mention that he was merely passing by and took on the task simply because the price seemed decent. Chen squinted slightly, his gaze fixed on Elder Winterchill. Slowly, he spoke. "Then may I ask what other matters bring you here, senior?" However, this time, Elder Winterchill did not answer. Instead, he smiled and looked towards Luo Li, who was undergoing her spiritual tribulation. He smiled. "This matter is related to her, so we need to wait for her to answer." Seeing his expression, Chen's gaze darkened, and a sense of unease vaguely stirred within him. Just as he was about to speak, Mandala gently shook her head to stop him. He fell silent and turned his attention back to Luo Li. Boom! Boom! At this moment, Luo Li was still sitting quietly on the white jade platform, but around her, an incredibly powerful spiritual energy fluctuation radiated. The intensity of this spiritual energy had far surpassed the peak of the 9th grade perfection. Above the sky, layers of spiritual clouds gathered, and occasionally, a lightning bolt, as fierce as thunder, would strike down, ruthlessly attacking Luo Li. However, every time this fierce lightning approached within 100 zhang radius of Luo Li, Luo River would rise with a roar, forming a massive water curtain to block the lightning entirely. It was clear that this Luo River was protecting Luo Li. Under this protection, the ferocity of the spiritual tribulation gradually faded, and in the end, it completely exhausted its spiritual power, turning into spiritual light and slowly dissipating into the sky. As the spiritual tribulation dissipated, a surge of unparalleled spiritual energy suddenly erupted from within Luo Li's body. The Luo River surged, raising towering waves. Countless envious gazes from the heavens and earth were cast upon Luo Li, for they all knew that at this moment, Luo Li had broken through her limitations and entered the realm of Lower Earth Supreme. Luo Li's tightly closed beautiful eyes suddenly opened in her glass-like pupils. It was as if a galaxy had converged at the same time. Her jade hand formed a seal, and within the Luo River, endless river water surged, continuously gathering towards her back. As the river water gathered, everyone saw a huge, water-like figure vaguely appearing behind Luo Li. This figure was slender and graceful, emitting a divine light, like jade. Her appearance gradually transformed, until it became identical to Luo Li's. That on her forehead, a mysterious river-like pattern formed, resembling a cosmic river, full of profound mystery. When this mysterious river-like pattern took shape, everyone in the heavens and earth felt an indescribable beauty emanating from this slender light figure. The beauty was so captivating that it could make the very color of the world fade. Before this figure, a similar river-like pattern appeared on Luo Li's forehead. Then, an extraordinary light burst forth. In that instant, Luo Li, already breathtakingly beautiful, seemed to undergo a spiritual transformation, her beauty becoming even more mesmerizing, as if she had become the most beautiful being in the world. She truly is the most beautiful woman in the great 1,000 worlds. Countless people were entranced by her beauty, and some murmured to themselves that in contrast to their enchantment, Luo Tianxun and other powerful figures of the Luo god clan stared in shock at the slender light figure behind Luo Li and the mysterious river-like pattern, incredulously exclaiming, That's the Luo Shun divine body. It was recorded in the ancestral records that the Luo Shun divine body was the most beautiful of all divine bodies in the great 1,000 worlds. Once cultivated, it would complement its master. The Luo Shun of ancient times had become the most beautiful woman in the great 1,000 worlds because of it. However, they never expected that after thousands of years, the second person to successfully cultivate the Luo Shun divine body would be Luo Li. It's said that the conditions to cultivate the Luo Shun divine body are extremely stringent. Not only must the practitioner possess an extraordinary beauty, but their talent must also be unparalleled. With such conditions, I believe that only Luo Li of the Luo god clan could have achieved this. Luo Tianxun gradually regained his senses and was overjoyed. He knew that Luo Li had inherited the Luo Shun inheritance, and with time, their Luo god clan might once again rise to glory. Amidst the intoxication of countless people, the light and shadow behind Luo Li gradually faded. She then lifted her head and smiled in the direction of Mu Chun. In that fleeting moment, her beauty was so captivating that it made everything around her pale in comparison. The envious gazes then turned toward Mu Chun. It seemed that if it weren't for his earlier display of overwhelming strength, some would have already been unable to restrain themselves and directly challenged him. Noticing the hostility in the air, Mu Chun's lips twitched. This moment, he finally believed that there truly existed a type of woman in this world, one so dangerously beautiful. She could bring about disaster. Chen and Luo Li exchanged a glance. Elder Winterchill also smiled faintly and said, "Truly worthy of being the heir of Luo Shan. From now on, the title of the most beautiful in the great thousand worlds may well be hers." Luo Li's gaze shifted toward Elder Winterchill. She bowed slightly, her demeanor graceful and composed. Not once did she show any sign of losing her poise due to his status. Calmly, she spoke. "May I ask, Elder, what brings you to my Luo god clan?" Elder Winterchill smiled, and then reached into his sleeve, producing an item. It was a golden scroll, and from it emanated an aura so immense it seemed to transcend the very heavens and earth, silencing the entire world in an instant. Slowly, Elder Winterchill unrolled the scroll, and his hoarse voice reverberated through the stillness. "The War Emperor has issued a decree. The Empress of the Luo God clan is hereby appointed as the new Holy Maiden of my Western Heaven Battle Hall." As Elder Winterchill's voice echoed, Luo Tianlong's expression suddenly changed dramatically.